What's going on, guys? Welcome to a special episode on the Renegade Pop Culture Podcast Network. My name is Mike. Joining me is my co-host, Yonah.
Hey guys, how's it going today?
Good. And today we have a very special interview with the directors of the movie White Lie. We have Calvin Thomas and Yonah Lewis.
Hey there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So
thanks so much for having us today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and thank you to Rock Salt Releasing for this opportunity. Now, you guys have you guys have a pretty interesting career. You guys have been working for at least over a decade. Where exactly did you guys meet?
We met in film school, and we kind of look at it as the best thing that came out of film school. Yeah, we met in our first year. Started working together in our second semester, and just very early on. Even though we didn't know much about film, we didn't know what we wanted to do after film school. We just we were drawn to each other's sensibilities and wanted to work together. And then as that progressed, as we finished school, as we got out of school, tried to figure out what we were going to do, how we were going to make films. Our instincts just grew and developed together. So we learned how to watch movies together. We learned how to make movies together. And so basically from, Yonah had made films before coming to film school. I had made some shitty video things before coming to film school. But like when we really got serious about making films and taking filmmaking as a career seriously, that was all developed together and from very, very early on. It's been 15 years actually. So at this point, a lot of people do ask, how do you work together, blah, blah, blah. And it's after 15 years of closely working together and really never having a fight or like a falling out. It's quite seamless, and we sometimes attribute it to being in a band or that's kind of the best way to think about it, is that we're in a band making the same thing.
You've developed like a shorthand in terms of communicating with each other and that sort of thing. It comes naturally.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Are there any films that you guys bonded over when you first met? Like certain directorial or things that just clicked automatically?
I think early on, Yonah can speak to this too, but for me, 15 years ago was when I started taking watching movies more seriously. And you can never get that feeling back despite trying and watching lots of movies today. It's very rare that something knocks you off your feet. It does happen 1 in 10, 1 in 20 movies. It's very exciting, whether it's something new or it's something older. But when you first start watching movies seriously, it's like your mind's being blown all the time. And so I remember back then watching through David Lynch, starting to watch Bergman movies, Kurosawa movies, Werner Herzog movies, all of those names who I didn't know previously, watched very, very closely and tried to watch in a sort of completist way. And you're just watching this incredible work, all at once. And in that way, early on, it's your mind's being blown all the time because you're you've never seen something like that. So yeah, Louis Buñuel too. Of course, we're seeing some of that stuff in film school, but a lot of that, I think we watched just on our own, renting from video stores and stuff.
We graduated in 2008 and spent 2 years trying to sort of continue our education a little bit. We wrote 7 feature screenplays in that time, but spent most of the time beyond that just really trying to sort of immerse ourselves in cinema in a way that we didn't feel film school had actually really done for us. So we watched, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of films a year. And so I don't think it was necessarily just one film, but it was just us starting to understand sort of the larger scope of the, just film in general, both what we thought we knew and realizing how little we actually knew and how much more there was to learn. And sort of, I think together we started realizing, really what the art form was.
That's really interesting because even as someone who's a film fan, the films that I grew up loving and watching were, more mass market fare, I guess you could call them, more action adventure-y kind of stuff. And yet, if you look at film as a whole, there's so much variety and so many directors and filmmakers who are just brilliant that you don't even know about if you don't study it and you don't really delve deep into it. So
Yeah.
that's why I have guys like Mike around, because basically I'm extremely bad when it comes to that. So it's something that I have to look into myself personally.
Hey, even I have like a bunch of holes and blind spots. Not just like in, I guess, what would be considered Hollywood, but there's a lot of foreign cinema that I still need to catch up on.
Oh yeah, same.
It's endless.
Yeah. So I guess what we want to talk about is your inspiration for the movie as well, which is, was this movie inspired by any true events or stories that you had read about or heard?
Yeah, I mean, it was not specifically one event, but we did first hear about it. I think Calvin heard about somebody doing it in Canada about a decade ago, and we were just instantly fascinated. Like right off the bat, we were like, "Oh, who is this person? Why would they do this? Why would they think they could get away with it?" And so we looked into them a little bit more. Couldn't find out too much, but we were able to start quickly. We learned that there were a lot of people doing this. That it was sort of a fairly large phenomenon in the world, sort of with the rise of social media, internet culture, as people were more and more able to sort of create their own personas online, hide behind their laptop. It became a huge thing everywhere. And so, yes, there wasn't one specific event, but it was sort of a phenomenon of this that we were interested in, and we just sort of took little pieces from all over the place to create one character. So it's partly true, partly our own imagination.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought it's so widespread that there's a lot of people doing that.
There's a lot of people faking things online, and so this is just one form of it. There's whole shows like Catfish and stuff like that about people just living fake lives, right? So it's no different than that, and it tends to be people, a combination of people looking for attention, looking for money, GoFundMe, all these kind of things exist so that, you can sort of create a story for yourself and say, help me. Most of the time, people actually need the help. Occasionally, they need that help, but not in the way that they're asking.
It certainly makes me think twice before just, randomly or just like instantly donating to somebody who's asking for help online.
Sure. I mean, and I don't think we're trying to say everybody is untrustworthy with this film.
No,
but
yeah,
it doesn't hurt to do your due diligence.
Yeah, like maybe, just think a little bit before pressing that donate button, just in case, unless it's like a widely known kind of thing. But I mean, yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a much larger culture of that in the States than here in Canada, where we have socialized medicine and you don't tend to need money as much for your medical care, which was actually a bit of a tricky dilemma for us in terms of writing the screenplay. If this was in the States, you'd say, oh yes, this is the reason you need the money. Whereas here we had to sort of concoct, sort of rent and lifestyles. She had to quit her job for a while because she was on keep. Like there's a number of reasons why she needs the money in the film that didn't come as easily as if we'd set the film in the States.
One of the things that I found interesting too is that the more money she makes, the more she seems to have to spend to maintain the lie. It's almost like, she wasn't just getting the money and just like buying a mansion for herself. It was a struggle for her. And that was interesting to me in that she, you would think that like, oh, she's getting this like thousands of dollars from people, but she actually has to go and pay $5,000 to a doctor to falsify her medical records and stuff. And it's just like insane, which was one of my favorite scenes, by the way, because I just love the low key menace in that scene of like that doctor guy. I was like, this dude has, he's been around. You know what I mean? Like he probably has guys to call on if you miss a payment or something, like you're not going to survive that. I don't know.
I think we just wanted to have scenes throughout the movie that threw Katie off her, threw her confidence off. I think it's a fun thing that you get to do with a character who's lying constantly is you get to have scenes where they're owning it and somehow like getting out of each situation by just lying off the top of their head and reacting very quickly. And there's lots of moments where she does that, but it's also nice to kind of cut them down to size and have them out of their element and out of control a little bit and see how they react in those kind of situations. And I think that's why that scene works.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Uncut Gems in sort of the journey that Adam Sandler's character takes, where he's like constantly on edge, constantly like owing other people money.
Yeah, no, I mean, a number of people have compared it to the, both Safdie's Good Time and Uncut Gems. And I mean, Uncut Gems hadn't been released when we were making this movie, but there's a similar sort of tension and just a constant having to think on your feet that they have in their films, and we put in this film as well.
But truthfully, where we took that from, most of the inspiration for how the film is structured and how those scenes play out and where that anxiety comes from is all from the Romanian New Wave. So Romania had this incredible burst of productivity and output of films starting in the mid 2000s, sort of not peaking, but kind of being most celebrated with 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, which won the Palme d'Or in 2007. And they, it was a sort of cohort of younger filmmakers who were outputting these incredible pieces, most of which were procedurals, most of which had a fixed time frame, which White Lie does, takes place over 5 days. Which kind of puts a clock on the movie and creates an inherent tension. And then the film constantly or those films from the Romanian New Wave really dealt with obstacles well, and putting the characters through the ringer to some degree, and just blocking their path to whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, and making it very difficult for them to sort of get away with it. And I think the Safdies do that well. Where the characters are kind of always having to think on their feet, always in motion, always, even if they win, they only win for, a couple of minutes of screen time, and then some other shit hits the fan and they have to, pivot and deal with that. And for us, I don't know about for them, but for us, a lot of that came from those Romanian films from the late 2000s.
Very cool. Wow. Yeah, and I love that forward momentum, like you say, because it just propels the story forward, propels characters forward. You don't have a lot of time to sit there and catch your breath, because this movie is just running along the same pace as Katie is, really. I love the kind of like neo-noir sensibility that you brought to this as well. I feel like this was, she's not a villain per se, because I feel like we know that there's a reasoning behind what she's doing, even though what she's doing is wrong. She's also like, she's desperate. She's somebody at the end of her rope, it seems like. It seems like that scene where she turns to Jen, to Amber Anderson's character, and she says, "Do you love me?" And I was just like, that line of dialogue struck me, because I was like, I've been there. I've been at that point of desperation where it's like, you're just asking somebody, do you love me for who I am? And I thought that was such, it cut to the quick of her character, I feel like. And it really actually, it touched me in a way, which I wasn't expecting, because I was like, I don't really like this girl, but yet there's that moment of humanity. And I think Casey Roll really brought that to the forefront of her character. So there was, I could empathize with her, but I didn't sympathize with her actions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're pretending for a moment that she's not doing something truly shitty. Like, she's just doing something that's awful, and we're not pretending for a moment that that's not the case. That being said, she's the lead. She's in the movie the entire time. You really don't have a moment without her. There has to be something compelling about her for us to want to spend that much time with her. And for us, goes back to that, what I said about hearing about someone doing this for the first time, which is just, you want to be fascinated by this person.
Exactly.
You want to be there with them, and understanding that they're doing something crappy, not feeling great about that, but also kind of wanting them to get away with it at points because you feel so bad for them.
Yeah, like also Amber Anderson, who's brilliant in the movie as well. I think she was like the one person that I kind of did really empathize with and sympathize with, because she is the compassionate one in this movie. Like, she's the one like super good person in this movie, who is really being taken advantage of and doesn't realize it. And yeah, I loved her performance, loved your direction of her character as well, and the writing there. So excellent. Kudos, guys. Kudos to you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
No, we think Amber did a really great job of that role, and we think it's actually kind of a very tricky role, in that she, everyone else has a little bit more nuance to their character. She's just kind of there, the compassionate supportive person, and Amber brought something a little bit extra special to that gave that character sort of many notes in a way that I think we can pat ourselves back on our backs for the casting of her, but I think she really she brought something special to that role.
What I'm curious about is how far along in the casting process did you decide on the roles for Kate and the love interest?
Amber was cast the first day of shooting, which is not ideal.
Well, especially not ideal when they're in England and we're shooting in Canada.
You don't want to do that. So that was not great. But we're obviously it worked out. But she was cast very late in the process, and Casey was cast. I don't know when we decided on her, but we did have her with like a decent amount of lead time. We were able to do Skype calls with her. She had auditioned once, and then we did a callback with her. She was based in Vancouver though, so we didn't meet her until the week before we started shooting. But
I think we started shooting in November, and I believe she was cast in the summer, late August or maybe early September. So
she had a few time. To work with the project.
Exactly.
But the way, Amber was cast first day of shooting. Amber's family, because we weren't sure of Amber's or of Jennifer's background. If we were going to cast, ultimately Amber had a British accent, so we decided to have the family, the mother, be British as well. But we weren't able to cast the family until we cast Amber. So Amber's family, where we had that big family dinner scene, they were cast maybe 1-2 weeks into shooting. So we were shooting the movie, going home at the end of every night, watching casting videos and still casting the movie, which again is not ideal. But again, we really lucked out with everyone.
Speaking of that dinner scene, the line that Jen's brother, I think, has, where he's talking about Hanukkah and Rosh Hashanah, and how he's talking about like it's a day of atonement for everything that you've done wrong. And I was like, oh man, the layers here, because I was watching Katie in that scene, and you could just see like the sort of like how uncomfortable she was in that moment, on top of everything else going on.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing I think about that moment for us was that I think we always, in the script at least, we always had a sort of what you're talking about there, but even writ larger. We always had sort of her really taking that in and thinking about that moment. Whereas what ended up on the day is Casey played it where it almost doesn't go in.
Yeah,
that sort of important piece of information is making its way, and then Jen comes in and she's distracted. You notice the way in which she's not actually really reflecting on things in the way that perhaps she should be, and that's maybe why she's not going to get away with it.
Yeah, you could see that. But it's just so funny when characters say that. Like, I love all that stuff whenever I'm watching a movie, like the layered dialogue and the double meanings and stuff.
Well, that was very fun to write in terms of Casey's character, in that she was always, as a character who's lying a lot, it's very fun and difficult, but mostly fun to try to write all those layers so that the audience understands she's lying. Does she understand she's lying at a point, but there's also some truth to it, and all the different layers of trying to get something out while you're completely making things up at the same time, and you're laying the track just before the train. That it creates a tension in the scenes that makes them a lot more enjoyable to write and ultimately to watch, I hope.
And there was another scene, speaking of that tension as well, where she talks to, I think it's her friend from dance class. She talks to her mother, and who is a lawyer, who is like a tax lawyer, and she just kind of like, she just instantly, after speaking with Katie for a while, she just kind of like gloms onto the fact that she is not being truthful. And Katie doesn't even have to say anything outright, but she just kind of gets it. So I love that scene. Like I said, I love those scenes where it's just underlying tension, and there's just, there's not an easy way for a character to get out of it.
Yeah, that scene I think is definitely a stand-up scene for a lot of people. And I think there's a lovely tension to it, even though it's just two it's a very quiet, it's just two people sitting across from each other on a couch in a dark room.
Yep.
There's a level of excitement there that you don't expect sometimes from an 8-page scene between two people. And that was one of the, what we feel was our greatest success in this movie, was just creating excitement out of that kind of what could be a little bit more tedious dialogue exposition kind of stuff.
I think there's one scene that kind of goes underappreciated. It's one of my favorite scenes, is the one where she goes to her dad's, I guess, office, and asks for money, and he's like almost immediately shooting her down. And I think casting Martin Donovan in that role is kind of perfect, because he has that very no nonsense sort of look to him.
Yeah, no, he's got a great sort of ability to be an intimidator, but in like a very gentle way, which is kind of very nice. But that scene was similar to the Colette scene, the lawyer scene. They're both these very long scenes where it's just someone. The thing we realized when writing the script was that it's actually very easy to get away with faking an illness. People don't ask you a lot of the details. People don't really want to get into the nitty gritty of it. So you say you're sick. Who are they to disbelieve you? So those couple opportunities for us where people do actually kind of start scoping things out a little bit more and trying to get between the cracks of her lie a little bit are a lot of fun in the context of the film, where most of the time people are just like, just assuming everything is hunky-dory.
And you can see just her desperation growing, and just her, like, the tension within her, just like she can't maintain her facade even during a family dinner. So it's great, man. It's just, I love this movie so much. I don't know, I'm just gushing right now. Sorry, guys. But yeah. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you real quick, since we have you guys here, is I guess, like, we kind of touched on this already, but what is the main message that you want to send out into the world with this movie, and in examining Katie's actions as a character?
Don't think there's ever a message that you try to make with a film, unless you're making a propaganda film. For us, we don't go into a movie hoping that there's a message. I think you write a movie and you try to put as much prep and as much thought into it as possible, and then you make it and it becomes something different, and then you edit it and it becomes something different. And it's not until you start screening it that you start to understand how people are responding to it. You might have hopes of how people are responding to it, but we never go in with sort of premeditated, this is how we want people to feel, this is how we want, I think if you're too definitive with your hopes for how a movie is going to turn out, you're going to be disappointed always. And so I think we did touch upon a little bit about it, that there were concerns, not from us, but from financiers and other people who read the script early on, that Katie would be too unlikable, and that people would just say, fuck this movie, like, fuck this character, there's nothing in it, she's just despicable. And that is the reaction of some people, and that's fine. But that's interesting, and maybe they'll have an interesting discussion with a friend of theirs who saw the movie who thinks totally different. But the consensus that we've had from a lot of people is that they are very conflicted with Katie's character by the end of the movie. They don't know how to treat her. They sort of wrestle with her, and I think that's a fun outcome. And is that what we wanted? Yes, I guess. Is that a message? No. But it is an outcome that we were hopeful for, that you would watch the movie and it wasn't just wrapped up in a neat little bow. You'd leave feeling conflicted, and you'd leave not sure how you felt about sympathizing or empathizing with this character and spending as much time with her as you do. And so I think that was achieved.
I agree. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, as our last question here, I'm going to ask you a fun one here. So if you had limitless funding and complete autonomy, and just like a studio or a franchise that you wanted to work with, or an original concept that you wanted to work with, what would be your dream project?
It's a good question, but it's a hard, I'm not going to give you an answer that is satisfying, because our previous 3 films, feature films that we've made, were sub $50,000 budgets. And so when you work with that small of a budget, you think very small. Our ideas do not have the scope of a $200 million studio film. With White Lie, we had much more money to work with, but still, in the grand scheme of things, it's peanuts for a budget. And therefore, again, with the script, you're paring things down, you're making it small. Our next film, which we're trying to figure out what that next thing is, and we're writing, we know that we're going to have a budget cap, because just because White Lie, is good and we feel great about it, doesn't mean someone's going to come and give us $10 million and we can, make a bigger film. We know we sort of have a slower trajectory of moving our way up budgets. And I think our ideas and the scope of our ideas will grow as our budgets grow. But at the moment, we don't fantasize of like, oh, what if the studio gave us $200 million? We have the project for that. We just don't, because I think we work sort of one project, two projects at a time, and we work within the restrictions that we know that we are going to have. So it's not a waste of time to dream and think about bigger projects. It's just we only have so much bandwidth, and we're always focusing on sort of what's immediately coming next.
Okay. Well, this is going to betray my interest a little bit here, but if I were to pare the question down a little bit, let's say if Kevin Feige or Walter Hamada came to you and said, I'm going to give you guys the keys to DC and Marvel, would there be a character that you would like to tackle?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's a good answer. I mean, I just, like I said, that's my sensibilities as a fan.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to know like what you guys would think as filmmakers. Like, if
it's funny. It's funny to see those studios scoop up people. You have an independent film that plays Sundance, and then boom, they're doing a Marvel movie next, and it just feels like those films are not made by filmmakers. Those films are made by studios and as often said, by committee and
assembly line.
Yeah, exactly. And I just don't think you could maybe delude yourself to thinking, oh, you could make a comic book movie that like people haven't seen before, or you could do something with your own sensibilities. But I think you'd be deluded, and I think you'd ultimately make something that you weren't happy with, or we'd get fired from it probably.
Does it feel like cheating when, say, for example, Chloe Zhao goes from like Nomadland to The Eternals?
I mean, there's always the chance that movie will be good. I would say based upon every other Marvel DC movie I've seen of late, it won't be. I think it's a waste of talent routinely having these directors do that. I would say to some degree, these movies are barely made by directors, as Calvin said. And so why waste their time, talent, and years on something that is, as people said, a theme park ride. So I think, if that person wants to get paid really well and do that, power to them. But I don't think Calvin or I want to do that. Now, someone waves a very large check in front of us. Who am I to say exactly what we do? At this point, our principles are, no, that's not what we want to be doing with our lives.
I will be curious to see what Chloe Zhao does, though, because The Rider and Nomadland are very interesting, well-directed films. Yes, I'll be very curious to see what she does.
Interesting. Well, all right, Mike, you want to take us home?
Well, thank you guys for joining us once again. Now, before we let you go, do you guys have any social media to plug? Or
I mean, we have Instagram and Twitter. Lisa Pictures is our production company, and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, not on Facebook. I don't know who uses Facebook anymore. No, but thank you both for having us and speaking with us and watching the film. Really, it was great to do that with you guys today.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Calvin, did you want to plug anything as well, or?
No, I think Yonah covered it. We share things. So no, we appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, guys.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you guys for coming on again. And thank you for making this movie and for, just sharing your gifts and talents with us as filmmakers, and for your honest answer, especially to my last question, because I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that filmmakers like you guys are around, because, we need that, as well as we need the big, huge summer tentpole blockbuster explosion movies.
Really, we just need a balance.
Exactly.
I mean, we have no problem with big summer blockbuster explosion movies. It's just, I think at this point, I think the comic book movies are not doing it for us.
I agree. As a comic book fan, I can tell you that, yeah, a lot of them have not been hitting hitting me where I live. Not like this movie did. I can tell you that much.
Glad to hear it.
All right. So you guys can find us at renegadepopculture.com. Also, the Facebook group is at facebook.com/group/RPC42. I am on Instagram at neoplasmic24 and also on Twitter at Keona Tang. That's KeonaTang. And then our official Twitter and Facebook accounts are at Ren Pop Culture. All right, Mike, go ahead.
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Captain K42. Check out my quick thought reviews on letterboxd.com/CoachK42. And you can find me in all the various Facebook groups just at my name. Thank you guys for joining us for a special Renegade Pop Culture podcast. We will catch you guys later. Peace out.
See you guys.